When we associate art with truth, we must avoid a common misunderstanding. This misunderstanding acknowledges the connection between truth and art, but it may misinterpret the nature of this connection, particularly the relationship between art and the nature of truth. They may understand the connection between art and truth as the expression of a truthful understanding of reality through art. This is not a fabricated misunderstanding, it occurred in the aesthetic thought of Aristotle. Aristotle's most important work on aesthetics is called Poetics. In it, there is a classic line that not only discusses literature but also general principles related to art, hence the title, Poetics. In Poetics, Aristotle says, and I quote, "When we look at a painting, the reason people feel joy is because they are simultaneously recognizing and perceiving the meaning of things." In other words, when experiencing the painting, people recognize someone in it. He thus articulates the connection between art and truth. For example, why do we need to paint a portrait of Prime Minister Zhou Enlai? Suppose we could just look at a photograph of Zhou Enlai, right? However, a painter has created a portrait of Zhou Enlai, so what is the significance of this painting? What is the difference between it and the original photograph? According to Aristotle, it is clear. First, when we look at this portrait, we feel joy, which is an aesthetic experience. This joy is a kind of pleasure. Why do we feel this joy? It is because when we look at the painting, we are simultaneously recognizing and perceiving the meaning of things. In other words, we feel that the person in the painting is someone specific. For example, we feel that it is Prime Minister Zhou. This does not mean that we have discovered a person, as the photograph could also do that. Instead, it represents a certain spiritual significance. So, what is the important meaning of Aristotle's statement? It is that the pleasure we derive from art is the pleasure that accompanies reason in performing its function. It means that we rationally recognize that this is a certain character, in this case, Prime Minister Zhou, who was the first premier of the People's Republic. Therefore, we come to know him through the portrait. Aristotle's view has long dominated the principles of literary and artistic creation in the West. What is this principle? It is that if an artist wants to successfully create a work of art, before creating it, the artist should have a certain truthful understanding of real life. Then, the artist expresses this truthful understanding through the artistic image of the work, helping us to better understand the essence of things. Although he did indeed associate art with truth, he actually did so on the premise of a truthful understanding of reality, which is necessary before creating a work of art. This kind of thinking has long influenced China. In modern times, it has been particularly prominent in the field of literary and artistic creation, manifesting as a phenomenon known as theme first. Therefore, a literary or novelist must strengthen their theoretical cultivation, right? Do you want to write about contemporary society? Or do you want to write about the era of China's reform and opening up over the past 30 years? You could create a novel for this era, just like the remarkable writer Hao Ran, died 2008, have you heard of him? He wrote Boulevard of Lights and Glorious Sky. He wrote about a historical period of the rural socialist cooperative movement. His novels are based on this theme. So, regarding this rural socialist cooperative movement that eventually led to the establishment of people's communes, a huge historical transformation in Chinese society, and a significant historical change in the countryside, Hao Ran gained a certain understanding of truth, right? Then, he portrayed the rural society, including the early-stage farmers, whether they were former landlords or later rich peasants, or poor and lower-middle peasants, right? He depicted the conflicts and contradictions that developed among them, ultimately bringing out the truth of the rural cooperative movement. This truth you now come to understand as reflected in the characters he created. For example, in Boulevard of Lights, there is a character named Gao Dechuan, the protagonist, a heroic figure, a positive character, the main character, and he created him. So, this creation, of course, depends on his understanding of the truth of the socialist cooperative rural movement. You need to obtain it first, right? So, it emphasizes that literary and artistic creators need to strengthen their Marxist theoretical culture, right? Then they can create, right? That's how it is. In this spirit, we have that novel. In some sections, the novel is vivid. It lets us, the young people in the city, know that there are such distinctive characters in the countryside. Even now, I still have a deep impression. There was a farmer, a small rich farmer, called Guandauro. I can't forget this character ever since I was a child. But I have forgotten about Gauda Chuan. That character Guandauro is very vivid. How he saves, how he is stingy. He says that the oil in the countryside is very precious. Don't we need oil to cook? This oil, it's not easy to get. When each time cooking, he pours out a little oil from the bottle, and the oil level goes down, right? It makes him uncomfortable as it feels like a waste. You know. Finally, he came up with a clever method. He didn't pour it, he didn't tip it over. He took a single chopstick, inserted it into the oil bottle, lifted it, and dripped a few drops of oil into the pot. But over time, the oil level still went down, right? He added water, and he always kept a full bottle of oil. He was quite proud. Because people thought he was rich, you know. There were poor peasants nearby, who always thought that his oil bottle was always full. He was showing off to the poor and lower middle peasants. How did they do it? Why was it always full? He had this method. After seeing this detail, not only did I laugh, I found it fun. The impression still hasn't faded. It has some literary value. Overall, it's a theory first, theme first, concept first approach. Such novel creation misunderstands the relationship between art and truth. It seems to demand that our literary and artistic creators must first become qualified theorists in order to create works with truth. Shen Yanbing, died 1981, is currently highly praised, right? We cannot object to this either. There is a Mao Duan Literature Award, right? To be fair, the literary value of his novels is not high. Let me give you an example of Dead of the Night. Have you heard of it? Shen Yanbing's novel, Dead of the Night. The protagonist mentioned is Wu Sunfu, right? Who is Wu Sunfu? A national capitalist. This Wu Sunfu's entire life and the final path of his destiny and the ending in this novel, right? The underlying theory has already been preconceived. Where did Shen get the idea? In Mao Zedong's article on the analysis of the various classes in Chinese society. It specifically analyzes a class called the national bourgeoisie. Mao Zedong theoretically proved in this article that the leading class for the democratic revolution in China cannot be the national bourgeoisie. Because they have a dual nature. On the one hand, they suffer from the oppression of imperialism and the comprador capitalists, right? Their market is constantly being squeezed. On the other hand, they constantly encounter resistance from the working class. On one side is imperialism and comprador capitalism, on the other side is what? The working class. They are caught in the middle. When they need to resist imperialism and the comprador capitalists, they have a revolutionary side. When they need to suppress the workers' movement, they definitely have what? A conservative and reactionary side. So what do we call this? The two-faced nature of the national bourgeoisie. This duality is bound to prevent this class from successfully leading the Chinese people's revolution, right? What was Mao Zedong's ultimate conclusion? China needs to complete the people's revolution to overthrow feudalism. The leadership class must do what? The working class, proletariat, and bourgeoisie are fellow travelers. This theory has been determined. The theoretical judgment is already there. We believe that this is a true understanding, and now a writer named Wu Sunfu has transformed it into an artistic image, thus creating novels such as Contradiction and Dead of the Night. So, even if you haven't read the book Dead of the Night, you can totally guess how Wu Sunfu's story ends. It's gotta be a tragic ending, right? I mean, the poor guy just can't seem to catch a break. Who's already spilled the beans on this? Mao Zedong gets it. So, no need to even watch the ending, you already know it's gonna be a downer for him. Wu Sunfu, you already know. Associating art with truth in this way is a misconception. So, what are we expressing here? The original occurrence is not about a certain interpretation of reality. Dressing it up in the artistic form is not the association of art with truth. We are not giving some truth-based theory, dressing a theory with truth in an image, making a diagram of it. This is not true artistic creation. This then immediately raises a question: why must we oppose Aristotle's aesthetic view that the function of art is to help our reason better recognize the essence of things, and that this recognition of essences through images is accompanied by pleasure? We must oppose this understanding because it treats art as an instrumental activity, without an autonomous status of its own. This raises the subject of the autonomy of art, which is a process in its evolution, not something achieved overnight. The idea that art's role is to serve reason's recognition of essences, even if accompanied by pleasure, relegates art to a merely instrumental status. We must argue for art's inherent autonomy, not just its utility in aiding rational cognition. The history of art involves a gradual assertion of its own independent value, beyond being a tool for other purposes, whether rational cognition or anything else. Appreciating the primal, original relationship between things and human existence, which art uniquely reveals, is part of establishing art's autonomy. In the early stages of its history, art has always been used as a tool. Does religion need art? It always has. Gothic churches were built, sculptures of deities were created. For example, sculptures of saints. Speaking of Christianity. And the same goes for paintings and music with religious themes. What was Western music in the Middle Ages? It was the art of the church, the music of the church. What did art serve as? The handmaiden of religion. Sometimes art is also used for political purposes, as if art is just a tool, so artists do not have such a high status as they do today. In European history, artists have always been equated with craftsmen, essentially skilled artisans with a special touch. This means that their social status and their art are closely linked, lacking a sense of self-awareness and autonomy. Hiring an artist by a noble is essentially the same as hiring a craftsman. So, in a way, Haydn was quite pitiful. He served the court, waiting every morning at 9:30 for the count to assign his musical activities for the day. Today, I will play a few pieces for you to listen to, as a servant. It was only later that Mozart managed to break free from this and become a freelance composer. But what did he endure? Poverty.